Look, it's a bird. It's a plane. No, wait, for some reason, this is the politically divisive topic of the last 2 weeks. It's Superman 2025, and today I want to give you a breakdown of the movie, what I liked about it, what I disliked about it, and then give you my overall thoughts on it, and of course, the stupid, pointless, ridiculous, absurd controversy, and of course, the people who push said stupid, pointless, unbelievably ridiculous controversy. But before we get into that, before we get into this breakdown, I want to say thank you to everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
So Superman 2025 has hit our screens. It has really good critic reviews. It has absolutely excellent audience reviews. And of course, it has a weird political controversy based on a misinterpretation of a statement from the director and the director's brother, which I find to be patently absurd and ridiculous. Now, if you guys are unaware of this controversy, then congratulations. I'm happy for you. I am honestly, genuinely proud of you for not falling into it. But apparently, the director's brother made some comments. In those comments, they said briefly that Superman is an immigrant story, which, by the way, is in fact true. And then they said that the movie was all about kindness. And in fact, the overall portion of the quote, the bulk of the statement was that it was about kindness. They just acknowledged that Superman has an immigrant and or refugee origin. But for whatever reason, because this movie came out in 2025, people specifically on the right decided that they were going to declare Superman woke, that this was going to be absolutely terrible, that we should boycott the movie, that we should be angry at the movie, even though if you actually read the full quotes that were in question, the immigrant portion is a small portion of it. It's always been in Superman's story. He is created by the children of two immigrants, and of course, he has a refugee story. His planet blew up, he comes to Earth, and as I've told you time and time again on this channel, because he is raised by good middle America, salt to the earth farmers, that's why he is the man that he is today. So it's a story of somebody coming here as a refugee, assimilating into American culture, and becoming one of the best representations of American culture. And if you are against that or think that that has to do with the evil Orange Man, even though this movie was like written 2 years ago, shot a year ago, edited mostly a year ago, then you're just a patently absurd and ridiculous person. But that we're just going to set aside at this moment in time. We're not going to get into that controversy. We are going to talk about the movie, and overall, the Superman movie 2025's, I actually really liked it. There's a lot of good in this particular movie. There were a lot of people that were doubters on this, and I had said on this channel, I don't think James Gunn is the perfect person to do a Superman movie. I stand by the fact because this isn't a perfect movie, but it's pretty damn good. And the reason why this movie works so well, first and foremost, is because of Superman. Now, going into this film, for some reason, a lot of people were saying that Mr. Terrific became the main character or something of the sort, that it wasn't really about Superman, that he's not even the main character in his own movie, and I am happy to report that that is not the case. This movie is carried by David Corenswet, and by the way, there was so much hate on him being like a skinny guy and whatnot, but this man, who was originally cast for this movie at 6'4", 190 pounds, shot the movie at 6'4", 240 pounds. He put on 50 pounds of muscle for the movie, and he looks absolutely fantastic as Superman, although I definitely don't recommend bulking up that much in that short a period of time. Although, to give credit to the man, he absolutely pulled off this role in every regard. Again, Superman is the best character in this movie, and then following that, the next best group of characters are your Lois Lane, and of course, you have your Lex Luthor. And Lex Luthor, what I've been asking for in a Superman movie for the longest time is to not be a goofy character. I don't want to see Gene Hackman. I don't want to see the guy who played him in Superman Returns. And I definitely, for damn sure, don't want to see Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor. And in this particular movie, we got the most serious on-screen Luthor. Now, he's not quite Superman the Animated Series Lex Luthor, which is my favorite Lex Luthor. He's more similar to All-Star Superman Lex Luthor, which is pretty good, has a little bit of camp, has a little bit of like goof in him, but overall he is a much more serious character than we've ever seen portrayed on the big screen. And I think this is aided by the fact that the guy who plays him, Nicholas Hoult, was actually third or in the top 3 for The Batman. He was actually beat out by Robert Pattinson, and in this particular movie he was in the top 3 going for the character of Superman, and he was beat by David Corenswet. So he actually brought into his performance the envy for the role that he tried out for, which of course was Superman. And by the way, definitely a good choice not to have him in this role, and that actually comes through on the screen, and it makes this character much better than we've seen him portrayed in a very long time. Again, all of the accolades go to, of course, Superman's Lex Luthor from the animated series and from Justice League, but right after that, I will give credit to this guy. And of course, I have a soft spot for Michael Rosenbaum's Lex Luthor on Smallville, but that is a live-action TV show, so there's more time to flesh the character out. But right here, we get a pretty good Lex Luthor. A little bit goofy here and there, but pretty good. Lois Lane, likewise, is a good representation of Lois Lane. She has her own ideology. She challenges Superman. That interview scene that is in the trailer that cuts off abruptly is actually longer in the movie, and it's better in the movie, in my opinion. And we are already brought into this world where Superman's been Superman for 3 years. He's been dating Lois Lane for 3 months. So, like, we're starting to see their relationship in, like, the next step of where they're gonna go forward, or maybe they're gonna break this off due to the fact that they have ideological differences. So yeah, I like Lois Lane. I wish she would have dressed up a little better throughout the course of the movie. The wife actually noticed that she doesn't have a ton of variety in her outfits, and she never really does her hair. So for whatever reason, that trend in modern movies where women have to be more frumpy did carry through this particular movie. But overall, these are the good characters in this movie, with a special shout out to Guy Gardner, Green Lantern, who of the Justice Gang is absolutely the best one among them. Mr. Terrific is okay. I don't know why people were overhyping his performance or overhyping his role in the movie. His only real role in the movie is that there's a very specific scientific element of the plot that he is needed to address because Superman's not a scientist. But other than that, he is not the main character in any way, shape, or form. Guy Gardner sticks out because Guy Gardner is oftentimes the a-hole Green Lantern. He's the biggest jerk Green Lantern, and Nathan Fillion plays that character to perfection. Now, of course, there's Hawk Girl, who's actually completely useless in the movie, my least favorite of the Justice Gang, and for whatever reason, maybe because in the Justice League cartoon, whenever she's swinging her mace, she goes like, ha, or like makes a sound when she does that, they decided to recreate that in this movie, but instead use a hawk sound. But instead of actually using a hawk sound, they decided to have Hawk Girl make the hawk sound. So she was kind of unintentionally the funniest character in the movie, because every time that actress tried to make a hawk sound, I could not help but laugh. Now, as far as plot of the movie, I was totally fine with the plot. I'm sure you could nitpick the hell out of it if you were so inclined, but in reality, the plot of this movie is most similar to the All-Star Superman plot, except for the facts and the details of said plot. In All-Star Superman, for those of you who are unaware, Lex Luthor concocts a scheme to get Superman super close to the sun, to turbocharge his cells with solar radiation, which effectively gives him a form of cancer, which means that Superman has to spend the entire issues of the comic book essentially trying to figure out a way to prepare the world for his eventual death. Now, in this movie, they're not going to kill Superman, obviously, so that element of the plot is completely removed, but the entire plot of this movie is revolved around the idea that Lex Luthor set up a scenario, because he knows Superman better than anyone else, where Superman would intervene in order to create the conditions to basically dismantle Superman's public image and ultimately end up killing Superman. Now, there's a lot of people who talk about the foreign country and foreign conflict that is in this movie. You have many of these people comparing the victims in that particular conflict to the Palestinians, thus making the aggressors the Israelis. And while I will say you could draw that conclusion from this particular movie, in reality, if you examine it a little closer, it is a combination of some of people's ideas about the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and, of course, the Russo-Ukrainian war that is going on right now. And one of the ways that this is kind of incredibly obvious is the fact that these people speak in weirdo Eastern European, Russian-like accents, but the countries are both made up. Again, I can understand why you would draw your conclusions to either conflict in the world, this being a parallel for, but it is actually a really superficial connection, and had there not been an ongoing war right now, you could have had this same exact conflict, and most people would have assumed that it was Russia, again, if it happened 3 years ago. Now, of course, the country that is doing the attacking is technically a U.S. ally that receives foreign aid from the United States of America, specifically receiving weapons from Luthor Corp, so I understand why people would draw the parallels there, but if you listen to the justification for the invasion, it sounds a lot like the justification for the Russian invasion into Ukraine. Now, of course, the population of this fictional country that could be Palestine, Palais Ukraine, if you will, is absolutely hilarious in that they're ultra diverse. That little black kid from the trailer that holds up the Superman flag that's saying Superman, 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 he is in a same country with random, like, Arabic people and other generic non-white people that don't mix up in a rural society like that. And of course, the population of the Russo-Israel, if you want to call it that, happen to be more white people, but they're also like Russian/Eastern European in terms of accent. So again, you could draw your conclusion about what that is supposed to be and about what that's supposed to represent, but in reality, it's actually not a huge portion of the movie. In fact, throughout the course of the movie, Superman is under the impression that Lex Luthor is trying to kill him in order to secure some gains from that war, but in reality, Lex Luthor actually set up that particular conflict, encouraged it to happen, because he just wanted to kill Superman. Superman is his main objective, and this is something that I actually really liked in this particular movie. But again, the plot or that little subplot or that element of the plot is not where this movie is at. Where this movie is at, fundamentally, is the world turning against Superman based on a concocted plan by Lex Luthor, and Superman having to rebuild what makes him a hero. Again, he pushes the idea of kindness, and he's trying to function as the kind-hearted combination between Christopher Reeve Superman and, of course, the DC animated universe Superman from Superman the Animated Series, in a world that is a little bit more convoluted without actually breaking him as a character. And this is probably my favorite aspect of the movie, because they don't need to change or modernize or make him depressed or make him miserable in order to function in the story. They actually write the story around the character that already exists as he should exist, rather than trying to modernize him or reimagine him a la Man of Steel, as if this is what he needs to be in this particular circumstance. And by the way, there was a lot of outrage from a bunch of different people, a lot of stupid quotes about how Superman is supposed to be a guy that, you know, he's in the city, but he's raised by these parents in Kansas, and he's supposed to seek them out for advice, and like they give him good values, and that's what he brings out into the world. And one of the reasons why they absolutely hate this particular movie is that it's so woke that that's definitely not gonna happen. Well, major spoiler alert for you guys out there in the audience, that's exactly what happens in this movie. Superman has almost no connection with his Kryptonian heritage. In fact, he has half a message that was sent with him to Earth because it's his only connection to home. That message ends up getting an additional half, which actually directs him to destroy Earth. Again, spoiler alert. But then he ends up going and having a conversation with Jonathan Kent, his father. His father instills his values, and what he takes with him throughout the course of the movie are the words and the advice and the experiences he had on Earth from Jonathan Kent. And that probably is one of my favorite parts of the movie, because I have said time and time again that Krypton doesn't matter. The only reason Krypton gets so much emphasis is because in the Christopher Reeve movies, Marlon Brando was cast to play Jor-El. So Jor-El and all the Kryptonian stuff gets more emphasis in Superman stories going forward. But in reality, the truth of Superman is that the reason he's so good is because he landed in middle America and was raised by a salt to the earth kind of family that gave him the values to go forward. In fact, this is the basis of the movie or comic book that preceded the movie, Superman Red Son, where he lands in the Soviet Union and he's completely different as a result of being raised in their terrible society by the people that live in that society as compared to the United States of America. And many of Superman's stories, like Elseworld stories, are all based and rooted in the fact that he wasn't raised properly by the Kents, again, this middle America family. This movie understands that, they go for that, and honestly, I made a video probably 5 years ago about why a bunch of Superman movies fail, and my key factors, the key things that I wanted to see were, of course, Krypton doesn't matter, the Kents do, so check right here. I also wanted in a Superman movie for him to be of Earth. He's not supposed to be God or Jesus or Moses or anything of the sort. He is supposed to be somebody raised on Earth, so he is the best of Earthlings, even though he's technically from another planet. And I wanted a serious Lex Luthor, and we got that. Now, of course, the fourth thing that I wanted, obviously, was Brainiac as the villain. We did not get that. I still want Brainiac as the villain. I still think Brainiac works as a villain, especially against this type of Superman. But whatever, 3 out of 4 is pretty damn good. It seems like James Gunn understands the character, and one of my favorite things about this movie, and one of my biggest concerns about this movie going in, is that the Marvel-esque style humor is not super prominent here. Like, my worst nightmare was that this was going to be Guardians of the Galaxy 2, which I think was way overloaded with jokes, but it's not even Guardians of the Galaxy 1, where they have jokes, but they're way better timed and way better fit in the movie. It's actually a much more toned down version of that, even though later on, Mr. Terrific specifically gets more of those Guardians of the Galaxy jokes for him. But again, he's actually not super important in the movie. That being said, of course, we got to talk about Krypto the Superdog. He is featured prominently in the trailers, and honestly, I could have used a little bit less of Krypto. In fact, there is a scene that a lot of people had referenced when they talked about this movie. Basically, they said that they liked this movie 98% of the way through, but then this ending scene, and of course, I know which one they're talking about, that involves Krypto, they think ruined the movie, and in reality, that ending scene is very similar to what we got in the Avengers with the Hulk smashing Loki, and I didn't care for that scene either, but it is very important for people to understand that at that moment of the story, at that moment of the plot is actually already resolved. Like, the victory has already been secured by Superman. He already did what he needed to do. So even though I don't like that particular scene, I find it to be stupid and unnecessary, in reality, it's not actually consequential to the story. Now again, David Corenswet really carries this movie. He is great as Superman. Again, he's a combination of Christopher Reeve's Superman and Superman the Animated Series in the best way. He has a Superman voice that totally works. He looks great in the costume. He actually enjoys being Superman, which I found out was like a mandate from the James Gunn team, is that Superman, he might feel a little bit disconnected from the people of Earth because of his alien origins, but fundamentally he likes being the hero. He likes protecting people, and one of the things that I like most about this movie is that Superman actually knows people in Metropolis. One of the biggest problems in the Man of Steel movies is that the only human being that he cared about was Lois Lane. He didn't give a damn about anyone else, but in this particular movie, he knows people by a first name basis because he's been Superman for 3 years, including regular ordinary kids that are in the movie, and of course, like the halal cart guy that's also in the movie. And what's great about this is that not only does that establish who Superman is as a person, that he knows random citizens in Metropolis, he's integrated into the community of Metropolis, but in addition to that, that is used against him by Lex Luthor, who again knows Superman better than anyone, knows his fight pattern, knows his personality, knows the people that he interacted with in his various saves, and he uses that information in order to hurt Superman even more on a psychological level. In addition to that, Superman, of course, he's powerful. He's Superman. He has all of his Superman powers, except for the crazy, ridiculous ones, but all the standard ones. But the way that he beats Lex Luthor in this particular movie, the way that he beats all of his villains in this particular movie, including Lex Luthor's plot to murder him, is by outsmarting him, outwitting him, and not because he's a better genius or anything of the sort, but just because he's a clever guy. So I actually appreciate that, because Superman is often considered by people to be like a dummy because he's not Batman, like the world's greatest detective who has a gadget for everything, but Superman's actually clever, and when he ends up in situations where his physical powers aren't enough to engage with the situation, he actually reacts in a way and thinks about it and problem solves, and that's something that I absolutely love. Now, there's a scene in the trailer that actually a lot of stupid Snyder bros were getting really upset about, where Superman blocks fire and then he says like, eyes up here, buddy, and then flies up into the air, and a lot of the Snyder bros were like, oh, well, why is Superman blocking if he's Superman? Wow, this guy's so weak. What's wrong with him? Well, what's not in the trailer, but I'm gonna tell you about, that's actually in the movie, is that the reason he blocks the fire is because he's actually deflecting it around people that are behind him. him. So he's not blocking it to save himself, which is something the Snyder Bros can't understand. He's blocking it to save other people, and he cares about other people. And in fact, one of the best parts about that scene with the giant monster is that Superman is saving a bunch of people. And by the way, some people get mad because he saved the squirrel in this sequence, but like, he actually wants to save the fire-breathing monster as well. He doesn't want to kill him, or if he does end up having to kill him, he wants to do it in a painless way. Like, basically, he would have like scientists euthanize him in a way that doesn't hurt him. And the Justice Gang, which is comprised of the Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, and Hawkgirl, don't understand his morality and his desire to preserve life above all other things, even though that includes this fire-breathing Godzilla-sized monster, which again, if you understand All-Star Superman, where Superman has a Sun Eater, one of the most dangerous creatures alive that he keeps alive in the Fortress of Solitude, totally is in line with the character. Now also, you get bonus points for having Jimmy Olsen be a redhead. We all understand that there is a redheaded genocide going on in Hollywood right now, but this movie decided, nope, we're going to keep Jimmy Olsen as is. He is going to be a redhead. However, they added a bunch of other supplementary Daily Planet people, including one of the worst interpretations, except for Supergirl, of Cat Grant ever that I've ever seen in my entire life, and all of those people at the Daily Planet could be cut from the movie. Again, this movie's not perfect in any regard. There are like ridiculous joke characters that don't need to be there. There's like cool cameos from characters like Metamorpho, but honestly, it's not my favorite interpretation of Metamorpho, if I'm being perfectly honest. But again, there are just some characters that could be cut. There's some additional joke scenes that could be removed from the movie, and I could have done with a little less Crypto. I probably wouldn't put Crypto in my ideal Superman movie. He's played for laughs. I understand he's modeled after James Gunn's dog and all of that, but yeah, just a little too much of the dog at the end. I'm a little not that interested in him. And of course, there is a reason why the dog is so disobedient. It turns out it's not Superman's owner. Spoiler alert, there is a brief cameo from Supergirl that I also didn't care for in this particular movie, where it is revealed that she is the owner of course, Crypto the super dog. You could have cut that, trim back on the dog a lot. I understand that the dog is probably there for kids, for the children, but yeah, the dog takes up a little bit too much time in this particular movie for my liking. There's also a villain in the movie called the Engineer. I think she's perfectly serviceable as a villain, nothing special, nothing fantastical, but honestly, she didn't really need to be anything more, because in reality, the main villain is in fact Lex Luthor, and both the Engineer and this universe's version of Ultraman are, you know, servants, or basically the mechanisms in which Lex Luthor ends up combating Superman. Now, of course, Ultraman is dressed up as Black Noir from The Boys, and if you guys are aware of The Boys comic book, there is a very similar revelation in this movie, and if you've ever seen a movie ever in your entire life, this revelation will be the most predictable thing imaginable. And one of the things that I was actually thinking that James Gunn could not resist doing was bringing my boy Bizarro into this movie. Let me get the shirt in there, the Bizarro shirt. And in reality, that actually did not occur. That didn't happen. The Bizarro cameo that I was expecting, or the Bizarro appearance that I was actually predicting based on this interpretation of Ultraman, was not in fact revealed to be true. So I was wrong right there, but overall, I definitely would recommend seeing this movie. It's not perfect, but the characterization of Superman is damn near perfect. It's not the best movie ever, but it's pretty good. The Kents, I have some issues with their portrayal. They're a little bit doddering. However, the Kents are typically older in the comic books. I actually prefer the younger Kents from Smallville, Jonathan and Martha in that movie, played by Annette O'Toole and John Snyder, if I'm being perfectly honest. But these Kents did their role. They gave him the moral lesson, they gave him the backing, and there's a part of the ending where some of the Kryptonian imagery of his parents is replaced by the Kents, and I actually really like that part of the movie. In fact, at the end of this movie, people started clapping in the theater because most people seem to really like this particular film. Now look, if you love Man of Steel and Jonathan Kent getting eaten by a tornado for reasons that Man of Steel fans say are totally justified in the context of the movie, but are fundamentally diametrically opposed to who Superman is as a character, then you probably won't like this movie. If you're expecting Martha Kent to tell her all-powerful alien son to do whatever he wants and he doesn't owe this world a thing,
You don't know this world a thing.
Which is a horrible lesson to teach your superpowered Kryptonian adopted son, then you're not going to like this movie. But if you actually liked Superman, if you're a fan of the Christopher Reeve Superman, this is probably the best interpretation of the character since that movie on the big screen. Way better than the Brandon Routh version of the character, which was actually literally trying to be the Christopher Reeve character. And if you like the animated series Superman, which I definitely do, from Justice League and from the Superman animated series in the 90s, then I think you will like this character. And if you prefer the all-star Superman version of Lex Luthor, you'll really like Nicholas Holt's performance. If you're like me and you prefer the animated version, if you like the Smallville version of the character, then you'll still like this, but you'll understand that there's like 1 or 2 notches above this for Lex Luthor where he could hit, and that's what you would actually like. Now again, I'm not trying to give too much spoilers about what's going on in the movie. There's little spoilers here and there in this particular review, but overall, I think that they did a good job. I would be happy to see this character, maybe even in the hands of a slightly different director, but like the same kind of tone of this movie going forward. Maybe you cut out some of the like little gags that are very, reminiscent of Marvel movies, but there weren't so many in there that I couldn't get past it. And again, Guy Gardner Green Lantern in the Justice Gang was probably one of my favorite characters in the movie, but fundamentally, this Superman movie is about Superman. A lot of word, a lot of buzz saying that this was about Lois Lane and she was going to be the real hero in this movie. Not true. A lot of word, a lot of buzz about how Mr. Terrific takes over this movie and he's the main character. Mr. Terrific is like serviceable in this movie. Again, the main man right here is in fact Superman. He is the guy. He is the one. And that's why I think this movie is worth seeing, especially if you're like me and you have one of those movie memberships to a certain theater and you don't actually have to pay for individual movies. But again, those are just my thoughts on this particular film. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about Superman 2025. Till next time.